I'm Ashley Bennett, and I am a Sigma architect at Aimpoint Digital. Today, I'm going to walk you through the solution for week 36 of this year's Workout Wednesday for Sigma. This week, we'll be using a brand new feature in Sigma, spark lines. As I initially created this challenge, my spark lines illuminated a possible issue in the data, so I also added a small data app that allows users to track and resolve comments on the issues that they find. Let's get started.
First, we want to add our underlying data. I'm going to find the Plugs Electronics hands-on lab data from the Sigma sample database. And from here, I want to create a child table. We're going to call this sales orders over time. And this is going to be our group table. I want to create some new columns. I'm going to shift plus to find year. And I want this to be year of our date column. And let's go ahead and group by that. I'm going to add another new grouping of month name of our date column. And we're going to call this month. And one last grouping using Shift G. We're going to call this day. And we want that at the day level, so the default is great. From here, we can create some calculated columns on our groupings. Under month, you'll notice that our months are sorted alphabetically and we want them sorted chronologically. So I'm going to add a calculated column to find the month of our date column. And then we will sort by that column. Now that's all chronological, and we can hide this column using Shift H. And also in our day column, or day grouping, we're going to want a hidden column to find that day number of our date column. And we're going to call this day num. And this allows our sparkline to share an x-axis without being offset by the year and month, because all sparklines in the same table will share that x-axis in the same column. And then we can hide this column as well. And I want to add one visible metric. But rather than sum of order number, let's make this account distinct. And we're going to call this total orders. And we will format it as a whole number. Now I'm ready to add my sparkline. On our month grouping, I'm going to hit this down caret or right click menu and add column via sparkline. We're going to use that day num column. And on our x-axis, we're going to do that count distinct of order number. And we will call this orders over time. If we do some formatting on our table, I don't want to show the collapsed columns or the summary bar. And then in our table style, to make this a little bigger and prettier and easier to see, I'm going to make this a large presentation. And you'll see that our October in 2021 has this weird little dip. So I'm going to go in and investigate. To make this easier to see, I am going to add some conditional formatting on our total orders column. And I want to add data bars. And let's go ahead and make that blue to kind of match our sparkline. And now when we look through, we see our dip in October. October 23rd has a dip of 1 order. That is strange. So now let's create a small little data app that allows end users to make comments and submit potential issues like this. First, I want to add an empty input table. So I'm going to add an empty input table here at the bottom. You always want to use the same connection in the workbook. And now I want to call this possible data issues. And we're going to add some columns. We want to add a date type called day and a number type called total orders, a text for comment, and then a checkbox for resolved. That way, whoever goes and looks at this can fix it. I'm going to delete our empty rows. And then we also want to add 3 hidden columns. We're going to add one column via lookup, and we want to look up from our sales order over time the total orders. It shouldn't need aggregated because they'll both be at that day level. And then day and day. There are no matches because we have no data in our input table. That's fine. We're going to call this original orders. Let's add some fake data so that we can test. Let's add 120 and testing. Great. Okay, great. We found our original orders for 8/18/25. And now I also want a calculated column. We're going to find the difference between the input and the original. I'm going to do original minus total. And we're going to call this order count difference. And then the last thing I want to do, or the last column I want to add, is a row ID. And I'm going to hide these last 3 columns. Now, I want to add some conditional formatting on our input table. I'm going to add it to all columns. And I want this to be a custom formula where resolved. That is shorthand for resolved equals true. And let's make this gray and check that to be sure it is working. Excellent. And then one more rule we're going to add. We're going to add it on all columns again to highlight the entire row. And we want a custom formula where our order count difference does not equal 0. And let's go ahead and highlight that red so it really illuminates those issues. Now I'm going to add an action. This action is, I think, a little UI enhancement when we change this to a publish edit. But so it's kind of optional, but I think it is nice. So I'm going to, on select of resolved, I'm going to go ahead and swap this to the different value. So I'm going to update our row. Our ID should match the selected ID column. And we want to update resolved with a formula. And we are going to do, I'm going to use a switch column. And about. We want this to be our possible data issues resolved. And when that is false, we'll set it to true. When it is true, we'll set it to false. And if it is neither true nor false, it will likely be null, and we'll just set it to true. So now, this might not work without saving. Oh, there it did. It did work. Great. Now we can set that in our publish mode without having to edit the data and then hit save. It just saves the end user a couple of clicks. Now I want to create a form where users can easily input their feedback. First, I'm going to create 3 controls, and I'm going to do this by just creating filters and converting them to page controls. And I'm going to use Shift F and convert to page control, F, convert to page control. And I don't want a date range, I want just a single date. And we're going to prefix all of our controls, control IDs, so that they are easy to figure out what they're pointing to, because sometimes you have similarly named controls in very large data apps. So we're going to prefix this with FDBK for feedback. And we have our date. I want this to just be a number input, feedback total orders. And this one, I want to be a text area to allow users maximum space. And then I am going to add a button to submit feedback. I'm going to add a button under UI. I like this to be wide. We're going to call this submit feedback. And I want to add all 4 of these elements to a container. This will allow us to easily reset our controls with 1 action instead of 3. And let's move our container to a new modal. And I will name this modal feedback. And let's make our container the width here and call this submit data feedback. And I do not want to show the default buttons. I like to use manual buttons so I can have full control on placement and look. And now I'm ready to add actions to my button. I'm going to go to this Actions tab, and on-click is our only option. And I will insert a row. We want to insert row into our possible data issues with our control day, control total orders, and control comment. And then we do want the resolve to automatically be false. Excellent. And then after that, as a UI enhancement, we're going to clear our controls in our container. Container 1, which I'm going to now remember to rename feedback controls. Go back to our button. So we're clearing controls in feedback controls container. And then the last thing I want to do is add 1 more to close our modal. With our modal created, we are ready to add a way for the users to interact with that. Going back to our grouped table, we're going to add a custom context menu option. We're going to call this submit feedback for this day. And with that, I want to add actions on our context menu option. And I'm going to set our controls. So let's set control feedback or set control day to date. Day, we actually want this today. And then we will set our total orders to column total orders. And then finally, we will also open our modal feedback. I also want to add a description to this table so end users know that there is something there if they need to add some feedback. So I'm going to just add a short little description. September. And then let's move everything into its final spot. As is best practice, we will keep our data table on a hidden data sheet and move our visible tables to their own sheet. We will call this sales orders, and this will be our data sheet. We will hide it, and let's add on our sales orders a text box. I like medium heading for my titles. We're going to call these sales order history, and then we can play around with our formatting. I'm going to actually go into the full workbook settings, change to dark mode, and I'm going to go ahead and update the entire workbook's table style to presentation large, remembering to wrap my headers, subheaders, and cells just in case. And then I would like to demo our app. So now if we go in to our October date that is looking a little wonky, we can right click and submit feedback for this day. And we'll say, this is really low. Are we missing data? And submit feedback. Our modal closes and we'll see our new comment. And if a user were to come in and resolve this later, they could just check it as resolved and there maintains that history.
Wasn't that easy? I'll see you next time for more Sigma challenges.